What's up, guys? Ray Reinhardt, Cast Astrologer. Today, for the record, is the 9th of January. I know I just did a video on the eclipse the other day, but I feel inspired to elaborate a little bit on at least the United States, or the influence this eclipse will have for the United States as a country, just from some dialogue I've seen from some of my friends on Facebook. So, I just wanted to point some things out and also go a tidbit into current events that are going on. So when we're looking at the United States natal chart, I use July 4th, 1776 at 5:30 p.m. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you want to use that or look at it for yourself, it's a pretty common, I guess, agreed upon chart for that. So I was looking at some of the degree points for the chart for the United States. We don't really have too much going on conjunction-wise. The Sun for the United States is at 13 degrees of Cancer. Jupiter's at 5 degrees of Cancer. The Venus is at 3 degrees of Cancer. It has to be within 4 degrees orb of the eclipse itself. Since it's at 20 degrees, those don't actually matter. In retrospect to this, the only thing that will be is Mercury as at 24 degrees in the sign of Cancer retrograde for the United States natal chart. The only other thing too in opposition, because the causality or causation theory with medieval astrology would be, as most people that are at least into political astrology would know, are Pluto in Capricorn, which is like what's going on right now, but that's at 27 degrees of Capricorn, and although it is in opposition, you can use a wider orb rule. I'm going to stick with the 4 degrees, and that's beyond that for 20. So, primarily the Mercury in Cancer for the United States chart is going to be impacted by this eclipse. So that has to do with the mentality and the communications and just the thoughts, information, ideas with not only the United States government bodies, but with people in general that are American citizens. So with the eclipse being at 20 degrees of Cancer, we look at other aspecting planets or points for the United States natal chart in comparison to this. So we're looking at aspect points between 16 to 24 degrees of Cancer. So I highlighted we have Chiron in Aries at 20 degrees for the United States natal chart. I already covered the Mercury one. Then we have Neptune at 22 degrees of Virgo on the MC. That's in the 10th house. It's also conjunct with Black Moon Lilith at 19 degrees in Virgo. That's going to be a sextile. Then we have the other square, which is Juno in Libra at 20 degrees. So the eclipse itself will be squaring Chiron and Juno. It'll be conjunct with Mercury, and it'll be sextiling to Neptune and Black Moon Lilith. Let's go ahead and elaborate on what those are going to actually mean for the United States as a whole. So eclipses obviously bring on destruction. I've already talked about this. It's irreversible change. The sextiling aspects, which would be Neptune and Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven, will be the target of a lot of its destructive potential. So obviously sextile is a harmonious aspect, in most cases. So if it's going to be enabling the eclipse, it's going to be a prime factor or target for a lot of the eclipse's irreversible changes. And then we look at the squares. The squares will manifest as dynamic change, things that won't, the destructive, transformative influences of the eclipse won't really manifest right away with the squaring points, which is the Chiron and the Juno. So this eclipse will emphasize on emotional well-being and a sense of security, since the dignity it was Cancer. And it'll be the squaring points will be dwelling in the 5th house and the 11th house of collective society and institutions. So the 5th house is representing self, individual. That be looking at the USA as a person, the country as a whole, the government per se. But what it would emphasize too is the self, the individual citizens that make up this country. They're part of the microcosmic of the macro for the United States chart. So with us having aspects for this eclipse that are being squared to the 5th house and the 11th house, there's a pull and a division between the sociological institutions, the elites, the media, the mass narrative kind of thing going on. I'm talking about like mainstream media and like the deep state and like career politicians and all that, versus the individual citizens. So this goes back to the eclipse affecting the emotional nature or the um, structure of the people. Because again, the moon in political astrology or mundane astrology does represent the collective society or people or citizens of a country. So it's going to be the attitudes and feelings from polarizing with the politicians, career politicians, or organizations or the elites again. So in recent times, good example of this building up would be like the Golden Globes. I can't remember what his name is. I've seen it so many times. Whatever. The guy who roasted everybody at the Golden Globes, and how that's went viral for everyday people. That sort of division or polarization is going to be amplified with this eclipse. Also fascinating with the sextiling to Neptune and Black Moon Lilith. Neptune and Black Moon Lilith in the United States natal chart. I wish I knew where that book was. I've made a video on it. It was like the Leo lunar eclipse, like probably 2 years ago, where I went into the United States natal chart and how the impeachment with Trump is kind of mirroring Andrew Johnson and all that, and how the media has intentionally produced newspapers with different perspectives or narratives about the same story and sent it to different geographical or regional areas throughout the United States to cause there to be a differing of opinion or perspective, and to cause people to basically go at each other. Yeah, that's a thing that's in the United States natal chart. This whole fake news or rivaling news kind of thing, or even the rivalry in general in politics, Democrat, Republican, hello, has been a thing that is part of the United States natal chart from the moment the Declaration of Independence and everything was signed. So that's going to continue to always be a fucking problem. It's becoming well known, luckily, because of the modern amenities of social media and transparency and all that, and people not being able to hide stuff. That their secrets are getting out, which is another reason why they like to censor social media, and they're trying to push for all that. Because if they were able to censor it, then they can continue to pull the wool over our eyes like they have been for the last 230 something fucking years. Anyway, that being said, so with this eclipse squaring Chiron and Aries, which has Chiron and Aries has to do with a lot of inhibiting of the self or some insecurities within the self, and it being in the 5th house would be of self-expression. So that would be people are feeling that they're not being reflected properly with a lot of the people that are in power or in legislation. So there's going to be more of a pull away from the people who are the deep state or the career politicians, and there's going to be a growing resentment starting tomorrow. I mean, it's already been happening, but it's going to escalate starting tomorrow, and it's going to further I guess put the last few nails in the coffins for any career politicians and any elitists in that regard. This eclipse also represents power of the American populace. It's falling in the 4th house, so when we're looking at this from like an Aries starting on the ascendant, it would be falling in the 4th house. The 4th house is where this energy has to go, and then the causation polarity phenomenon I've talked about with cause and effect will be affecting the 10th house, which has to do with governments and establishments and traditions. So it would be people who have been in the establishment for a long time. Primarily that'll end up being the casualties or the targets of this. Politicians are in trouble, specifically the ones projecting false narratives, the ones that are continuing to enable the Neptune and Black Moon Lilith conjunction on the midheaven in the United States. Those people are in trouble. A lot of their lies and bullshit's going to get caught. They're already fucked. There's no way to come back from this. They're just digging themselves deeper, and they're going to continue to dig themselves deeper because they're cocky and they actually believe that they can continue to pull the wool over people's eyes and that people aren't getting this. Well, it's too late. When Trump was elected and put into office, he was the catalyst to show people that this is all bullshit. And that's why they've been trying so damn hard to get rid of him. That's why they also have been promising to impeach him from fucking day one. And that's why everybody, the elitists, everything, everybody who's against Trump naturally, unless it's somebody who's just, has, like, a normal, everyday, average person, just has this perspective that they hate Trump. It's just because they're blind and easily led. But the people who are in power and authority and have influence that hate Trump are a part of that Neptune, Black Moon, Lilith problem. So, when the politicians are in trouble, specifically the ones projecting false narratives and lies, people are tired of the Neptune, Black Moon, Lilith 10th house bullshit. So days away from right now is the exact conjunction for Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. That's a huge event that, again, has been talked about by many circles of professional astrologers for over a decade. And this is no surprise that Iran just got its ass handed to them. And that's a career tyrannical politician or whatever, or an establishment that's been going on for a long time. They've been doing a lot of fucked up bullshit to a lot of people. Just for example, them getting mad and having a hissy fit and blowing up the Ukrainian, or crash, shooting down the Ukrainian jet. Like, imagine all the times that they direct their energy to cause chaos, but then when they cause chaos just indirectly, just think of that. So they're getting their asses handed to them right now, and they're going to continue to make themselves look like a fucking joke, and they're just going to justify to the rest of the world why Trump is allowed to keep doing what he's fucking doing. And just exactly with what's going on in Iran to the United States right now, that's going to happen to everybody who is corrupt, has been there for a long time. So anything, Saturn represents karma, and the aspects with Pluto conjunct Saturn, old abusive authoritarian figures, establishments, and countries are about to get their asses handed to them. So the UN, the corrupt bankers, big pharma, all that shit, the deep state, the House that is, Democratic majority, they are going to get their asses handed to them. That's what's starting tomorrow. And because those are, generational planets, it won't happen right away. So, you know where that's going to happen at? It's going to happen when the elections are going on in November. Yeah, they're fucked. They're fucked. So whether it be career politicians, totalitarian leaders, corrupt bankers, big pharma, legislators, they're all fucked, and it's the beginning of the end for them, starting with the eclipse tomorrow. I hope that they enjoyed it while it lasts, and they should have knocked their shit off a long time ago. But as we can see with how stubborn and consistent they are, they're never going to quit. So what we got to do is start fresh. Thanks to Saturn and Pluto's conjunction, that will happen. And because of the triggering aspect with the eclipse tomorrow, it's going to get started and ramped up to whole new levels, and we're going to clean house like a mad woman. And I can't wait.